Welcome back to another episode of Sal and Pals Go to the Movies. I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hey guys.
And today we're going to be reviewing Mary, Queen of Scots. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. Mary Stuart's attempt to overthrow her cousin Elizabeth I, Queen of England, and then finds herself condemned to years of imprisonment before facing her execution. So this movie is based on a biography by Dr. John Guy's Queen of Scots, The True Life of Mary Stuart, which basically this film relies on a theory that this book brings forward, where he talks about Queen Elizabeth and Mary Stuart actually meeting face to face. And a lot of historians do not agree with that. So there's a little controversy between those two communities. Just to set forth the movie, in the movie they do meet face to face. So it takes the book and just retells the story there. So on accuracy, we're not going to basically dish this out and just like Braveheart. So the thing is that this movie might have some accuracy and some misaccuracies, but we don't know which is what based on the book, because we never read the book. So we're just going to put that to the side. But this review is going to basically focus on the movie, the costumes, the design, the story, if it was entertaining, captivating, and so forth. So I'm going to start it off by saying that I have a few cons and pros for this. I'm going to start with the cons. My first con is this movie was quite long. It came in about 2 hours, I think, a little bit over 2 hours. And for a movie about two people who never met each other based on the history that we know, that's a pretty long time to just sit there and watch these people not interact with each other. But then this movie does have them interact at the end, which is basically the climax of the story. My other thing that I had I think it was a con, but not a big con, was they did not really emphasize the scenic views of England and Scotland. We just saw these two queens ruling from the inside of the structures. We saw them go out and once in a while, roam the fields and stuff like that. But I really wanted them to be more outside in the environment, basically focus on the scenic views so we can actually tell, okay, now they're in England, now they're Scotland. So it's kind of this whole idea of mine that if it's a historical thing, you want to emphasize on the lands. So the lands are really important to me, and as you can tell from other reviews. But that's a kind of a mini con on my list. Now going to the pros, I really enjoy the costumes on both ends, Elizabeth's and Mary's. They were not the same. They were a little bit, kind of skewed from each other. Elizabeth was over the top, while Mary was more, I think they represented her more like a common queen, in a sense, made her feel like she was more approachable. And I think they did that on purpose so we can actually relate to her and you would actually find yourself rooting for her, which actually technically I was actually rooting for her, even though I knew what the outcome was going to be. I still kind of was like, oh, come on, there has to be somebody comes in and saves her or something, which really led me into believing the characters and be more invested in the roles. The other thing is the cast was amazing. I'm going to go down the list. First, we have Margot Robbie, who plays Queen Elizabeth I. Then we have Saoirse Ronan, who plays Mary Stuart. We know these both characters, one who played Lady Bird, the other one who plays Harley Quinn in the DC Extended Universe. And also she played Tanya in the movie I, Tanya from 2017. Both characters, both female roles. Then we also have down the list, we have Gemma Chan, who plays Bess of Hardwick, who is the handmaiden of Queen Elizabeth. We have Jack Lowden, who plays Henry Darnley. We also have, to me, which is kind of interesting, we have David Tennant, who plays John Knox. For people who don't know who David Tennant, which is I'm pretty sure that everybody know who he is. He played Doctor Who, and in one episode of Doctor Who, he kind of goes back in time and then actually meets Elizabeth I and somehow ends up marrying her. And in this role, he's against Mary taking over. So it's kind of interesting for me watching this role and having a guy who played a Time Lord in the film acting the way he was acting, which kind of gave me another little layer of interest in the film. So what I really enjoyed about this movie is the fact that they were postponing the meetings between both queens, and they were coming up with different things to basically postpone them. One of the things was that the lie was that the Queen Elizabeth had to go attend something at France because there was something going on with, I think, a battle or war. The real reason was that she had the pox, and historically, I remember in school we were taught that that's why she would use heavy makeup and that's why we see her and we remember her as this queen who had white powder on her face. When I was a kid, I was like, oh, she looks like a clown. But now understanding that she had pox and survived it, there was scars on her face. And then as a queen, you couldn't do that. You couldn't face people with scars on your face because queens had to be beautiful. So to me, that was a little bit that was kind of historical and referenced in the movie. Other than that, the acting was amazing by both parties. It really captivated me, especially Cersei's acting, her accent. Well, that's her original accent. But it was just amazing how she could just go from that accent to a fresh accent and back and forth. So to me, that was pretty amazing. Margot Robbie was really the stone-hearted queen that I envisioned Elizabeth I to be. If you ever met her, she really captivated that, like, I can't be weak in front of the man because I am the queen and I have to be careful. And that's why she always had a force field upon her character. So that was really amazing on her end. Like I said, it was pretty good, but there was a few cons in the movie. So now with that, I'm going to pass it on to Touly.
Going off some of the ideas you mentioned, I agree with you in terms of the costumes. I thought those were pretty elaborate and really defined the movie. And you made the distinction between Mary and Elizabeth. And I'm going to go a little step further too with that idea. So relating to what Mary and Elizabeth wore, like the differences in how elaborate one was versus the other, I feel like that was attributed to who they were as well as a person. Mary, you said like she was more dressed up in a way where she was approachable as that sort of a queen. I sort of thought of it as like her not needing to be too over the top in terms of her physical appearance, because she demonstrated her personality or her trait as an individual through her actions. Instead, she was like more assertive. She was very commanding. If she wanted something, she was, strive to aim, go get it, versus Elizabeth, who in a way was hiding behind how, her physical appearance. Like how the movie came to tell this, like she wasn't married. She had no interest in getting married or having an heir to the throne. She was satisfied as to where she was in life. Like she didn't want any sort of change to where she was at. So she wanted to hold on to what she had, like the control she had over Scotland as ruler. In order for her to like deflect this sort of characteristics of her, these internal features of her, she wore these very elaborated costumes or was way over the top compared to Mary. So that's how I saw the difference between Mary and Elizabeth in terms of their looks, that they actually held more meaning behind them in terms of who they are as a person. So I thought that was well done. In terms of like storytelling, and I know you said earlier at the beginning of this podcast that we wouldn't talk about the accuracies and make that a compelling argument for us as to whether or not we like the movie or not. So I'm going to bring up the part where they meet up in terms of storytelling. So I know this is based off of the biography that you mentioned, and whether or not they met up or not, to me, I'm not going to look at that part. I'm going to look at it from the perspective of why they included this particular scene in the movie. Because say if they didn't actually meet up based on like history or facts, then without having this scene, the movie would have lacked, like you said, that climax part where they confronted each other and, had that very impactful conversation that they did. But even then, I felt that from a story perspective, or from if you were to develop the relationship of these characters, that I felt like they needed to confront one another a lot more. Like this scene was great. Again, I understand that this is based off of history, but in terms of storytelling, I wish they would have just met more. And so I felt that these characters alone, they were great in their own rights, and they did talk to each other through letters and whatnot. But I feel like if we just had more moments where they talk to each other face to face, I would have been a little bit more happy about how things turned out. Because the way they made it seem, and it's of course based off the name of the movie, Mary, Queen of Scots, they made it seem like she was the protagonist in all of this. She was the one who was gonna overcome the evil. And I guess the evil in this sense is Elizabeth, because she was the one who was trying to get overthrown by Mary by her coming back to Scotland. I could kind of see it both ways where, yes, I see Mary having, an entitlement to the throne, but at the same time, here was Elizabeth having been here already and trying to defend what she had. Again, going back to her character, she was content at what she already had. So for somebody to come back to her or come back to her neck of the woods and try to steal what she already had, I can kind of feel for that. So I never really thought as Elizabeth as being an antagonist to all of this, but I feel like the movie portrayed it that way because, again, based off the title of the movie, they made it more focused on Mary instead. So I think to some people, it might have come across that way, that Mary was the protagonist of the two cousins and then Elizabeth was the antagonist. But in all honesty, I think that one thing that they did well, and it's quite frustrating too at the same time, that the main antagonist in all of this is the men, because they were the one who was trying to manipulate both the cousins and trying to get them to feud with one another. To me, I thought that was great that they used that as a central idea to come and have these arguments at the end. But at the same time, I felt that this was the only thing that they had going for it in terms of causing tension. And because of this, it goes back to what you said earlier about maybe the movie being a bit too long because they didn't have much to play around with other than this. Like they kept on coming back to this and trying to portray it from both Mary's and Elizabeth's side. So much so that I kind of got tired of it. Like, I wish they would have introduced some other ideas. You did mention that they did stray away from this and try to give you other scenes or struggles that maybe like Mary might have been involved with. But to me, I feel like that was just a roundabout way to waste time rather than getting to the point or just sticking to the point. So I wish they would have done that instead. And maybe they would have probably been able to have a movie that might have been around an hour and a half or something instead. Yeah, I think that was like a con for me, for them like beating around the bush and not sticking to the central theme.
No, I agree totally with you. I really saw that the story shifted, between these two characters, and there was the backhanded of the man, and then at the end they were like, well, what else can we do? We're trapped, and we saw this with Mary's character, where she got to the point that she was manipulated by the man behind in her court. They were signing papers, they were making her do this and everything, to the point where they were actually leading her into a trap. The same thing I actually saw Mary going through. I actually thought Elizabeth had gone already through that, even though like on her speech when she was on the roof with her, I think her counselor, she was saying like, I'm more of a man now than a female kind of thing. She's like, you guys have been working me to the sense that I can't trust anybody. So I'm like you guys, I'm always on the defense. And why? Because maybe her court was doing the same thing that they were doing to Mary. In a sense, she's like, all I can do is now is just sit here and basically just like keep my eyes on you and not blink. Because if I don't do what you tell me, if I don't go with you, you're going to attack me and maybe dethrone me yourselves, So I saw this like, both cousins were like going back and forth, and like you said, Queen Elizabeth, I mean, she was already there. It's like having you're in your house and then you have somebody coming in, says, hey, I'm your lost long brother or something, and yeah, I got dibs on the house because I own the house. And like, wait, I built this house, I decorated it and everything, and now you're coming in and taking over. No, that doesn't sit well with me, kind of thing. So I think that's how the movie wanted to portray it, but I really enjoyed the fact that behind the scenes, everybody was manipulating these two queens into doing what they wanted. So I agree with you, and I see it that way. So with that said, why don't we give this movie our final grade? Touly, why don't you take it away?
I would give the film a 6 out of 10. Again, I know maybe they were confined in terms of trying to stay as true as they could be to the biography or to history or whatever, but sometimes I feel like maybe you need to take a little more liberty to just give it that extra little jazz or whatever, so that from a storytelling perspective, it's a little bit more compelling. So yeah, 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I feel the same way you do. I felt that I was watching this long version of the History Channel, and I couldn't pull myself away from saying like, this is way too long. If they could have shortened a little bit more and just focus on some points, more intense, basically because it's based off of biography. If they just focus on the main points a little longer, that would have made the movie more valuable to me. So for me, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. So that does it for this review. Please join us next time when we go under the sea, not with the Little Mermaid, but with Aquaman. Social media is down in the description, and hit us up if you have any questions. And remember, keep watching movies.